The Montgomery College Smithsonian Faculty Fellowship Program is a unique collaboration between the Paul Peck Humanities Institute and Smithsonian's Office of Educational Technology. This unique professional opportunity encourages community college faculty to teach with the Smithsonian. Originally from St. John, Virgin Islands, Victor Provost is a professional musician and educator working across several genres and disciplines, including jazz, contemporary, and world music. He is an active performer, composer, and recording artist, and is currently an adjunct professor of music at George Mason University, Towson University, and Montgomery College. He has led his own bands at prestigious venues and festivals, such as Lincoln Center, the Kennedy Center, Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, the Umbria Jazz Festival, the St. Lucia Jazz Festival, and many others. As an educator and clinician, he has presented numerous times at the Percussive Arts Society International Convention and has led master classes at NYU, Berklee College of Music, ASU, TSU, NIU, and over a dozen other colleges. He graduated summa cum laude from George Mason University, where he founded the Mason Steel Pan Ensemble, with both a BM and an MM in music and a concentration in jazz studies. At MC Rockville, Victor teaches world music, directs the MC World Ensemble, and teaches honors world music and the summer travel seminar in the Montgomery Scholars program.
Thank you, Mimi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Victor Provost. I teach in the Department of Visual Performing and Media Arts. I teach the world music courses here at Montgomery County, and also the World Ensemble. And before I get started, like my colleagues, I want to thank Denise and Mimi and Matthew and Sarah and Jamie from PPHI. And I want to thank my chair, Alvin Trask, and Dean Frank Trezza in Visual Performing and Media Arts, and Dean Carolyn Terry and Lucy Loff in the Honors College. I want to thank my colleagues at the Montgomery Scholars Department, Michelle Moran, Jennifer Lee, Kevin Gibbons, and Scholars Director John Wang. And also a super special thanks to the administrative aides, Michelle Brink, Renee Morgan, and Kaylin Yuen, who helped me track down all the signatures I needed to complete the application and our Alt-Esh forms. So I apologize. I tried my best to get my throat clear, but it's that time of year. Things are going around. So each semester, students in the Music 117 and the World Music course survey folk, classical, and popular musics of the world by exploring the musical cultures of several distinct geographical regions and time periods, including the music of indigenous communities in this region. So we cover modern musics and we cover musics from the ancient world, which means over that large time span, we have to acknowledge the impact of colonialism and imperialism on the people that both create and preserve these musical spaces, right? So discussions about the role of music in protecting underserved and displaced communities are central to the class. Hey, there it is. So the initial goal of this project, which was entitled A Change, Music, Justice, and Resistance in the Modern World, was to challenge students to extend those conversations about colonialism and imperialism and to examine their effects through a contemporary lens, to engage with various musical cultures that interact in those spaces. So, for example, you could point recently to protests that followed the murder of George Floyd in the summer of 2020, and to this huge increase in streaming and listening of songs like "This Is America" by Childish Gambino, Kendrick Lamar's "All Right," or Beyonce's "Freedom," which also features Kendrick. I'll just play a little bit of kind of the end of this. Oh, you know what? I bet you all can't hear that. Advanced sharing options. Uh-oh. Can you hear it?
No. Did you enable
Can I get a
sound?
thumbs up if you can hear? I thought I had it all figured out. Give me 1 second. I think I know what I need to do. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna kind of continue. I'll let it play even if you can't hear it because I'm kind of more interested in talking about the visuals for a second. So you can also point to similar examples of musical protests from over 200 years ago, right? When enslaved Africans sang the Le Marseillaise to mock French troops during the Haitian Revolution, and you can also point to a kind of continuity in the imagery between the imagery and this Beyonce video that we were just watching, and the savage history of lynching that prompted Billie Holiday to sing and record "Strange Fruit" in 1939. And this is Billie Holiday, this is Kendrick Lamar, and then my students would eventually end up examining this Detroit techno genre as a kind of a subversive musical form. So the initial proposal was really conceived for my general music 117 class, which is a class that's open to all MC students. There are no prerequisites in either writing or language, but I wasn't to teach that class because it actually conflicted with our weekly Smithsonian meeting. So in the early fall, with the help and input from my cohort, I started reimagining what this project might look like for the honors course that I teach with Montgomery Scholars. So this was a bit of a challenge because the honors course runs for an entire year instead of one semester. And it's part of a co-taught curriculum that I share with 3 other professors. So I didn't have the flexibility to just kind of unilaterally add the assignment to our year-long syllabus and class schedule, which had already included several museum visits, including one to the National Museum of African Art, which you see students pictured in front of here. My teammates in the Scholars Program were super gracious, and they allowed me to essentially hijack that museum trip so that I could adapt my Smithsonian project around it. And I ended up focusing on an installment by visual artist Ayanna V. Jackson, whom I will talk about in a bit more detail shortly. The project itself was carried out in 2 phases. There was a pre-visit and a post-visit phase. And the first part of the project happened before the museum visit and asked students to write a critical review of a musical album in several scaffolded steps. Right? So the critical review requires both critical listening and also thoughtful use of written language. I introduced this concept of the review and learned that most of my students had read popular or personal reviews, which they didn't particularly trust. These are reviews on Yelp or OpenTable or Amazon, but very few had read a critical review, let alone an album review. And even the concept of the musical album as a collection of related songs was a bit dubious or unfamiliar to them because of Spotify. So in order to prepare them, I tried to give them a bit of scaffolding. You can see in step 1, their first part of the assignment was actually to read some reviews, to read these critical reviews and to annotate them, right? So they could choose any 2 albums that they wanted, but they had to read and annotate and submit those annotated reviews that they read. Step 2 was to watch this video by John Perellis, who is the popular music critic, a writer for the New York Times. And step 3 was just kind of a checklist, essentially that asked reminded the students to check the structure of their review, that reminded them that their observations should rely on the musical elements that we talked about in class, right? So things like melody and timbre and tempo, density. These are musical vocabulary that are part of the unfolding of the class experience. And reminded them that it's important to support their statements with specific examples from the album, right? That it's not simply a statement of your opinion, whether you like something or not. And the albums that they were going to review, that they were going to write about after they'd finished this first step of reading and annotating, the specific albums that they were going to review kind of take us back now to Ayanna V. Jackson's exhibit at the Museum of African Art. And so this is from the Smithsonian's website. I'll read to you. It says, "From the Deep," the name of the exhibit is "From the Deep in the Wake of Drexciya," which is inspired by the Detroit-based 1990s techno band Drexciya, whose albums imagined a mythical aquatopia populated by the descendants of pregnant African women thrown or who jumped overboard into the Atlantic Ocean during the Middle Passage. In this exhibition, Jackson expands her practice to include animation, immersive video, installation, sound, and scent. She creates a series of haunting, yet profoundly beautiful and empowering encounters that draw upon African water spirits from Senegal to South Africa. Let's listen. Actually, nope, we don't. We don't have sound. So unfortunately, we're not going to hear any Drexciya right now. But I did want to share some student work samples. So these are some examples of the students in their annotation process. And I found that those students that annotated with great detail, that obviously correlated very closely with those that were highly successful in their writing process. So here's a short quote from one of the students. I love the very first sentence, "Neon Falls is a contradiction of sound." I love that statement, contradiction of sound. The second part of the project kind of asked them to reverse Ayanna Jackson's process, right? So she heard this music and created visual art, and our job was to go to the museum and let the visual art inspire us to create a musical composition and a piece of reflective writing. How am I doing on time? I did not notice exactly what time I started. Did we start right at 3:15? So I got like 2 minutes left. Is that correct?
You have 3 more minutes. We started at 3:16.
Okay, perfect. So here's some pictures of our visit. Here's one of the examples of this is part of the Drexciya exhibit. And so students were asked to find an item in the museum that impacted them, and to reflect on that item in writing and also as a piece of a musical composition. So this student says, there's a young woman. She's beaten and dragged through Tahrir Square by Egyptian armed forces during a protest. And in the process, the veiled woman's blue bra is revealed. The blue bra girl became a symbol for abuse of power of the Egyptian military, the thousands of women who rallied in protest against the abusive military that reigned over Egypt. I feel compelled to stop sharing so that I can share this musical response, if that's okay. If you all will just bear with me for one more second. I think it's important that we hear the students' responses, and I should have clicked share sound right from the beginning. You'd think I don't do this every week. Okay. So I'll share one more. And you can read while it plays so that I don't use up all of my time reading to you. So very much in the spirit of 80s Detroit techno, these students composed this beautiful work and explained all of the elements, the visual elements that went into it. And here are a couple of student quotes. I'll just share one very briefly. It says, experiencing the different exhibits and seeing the variety of art forms at the museum reminded me of Africa's vast diversity. This was also represented by the artifacts from the different regions of Africa. One exhibit that was memorable to me was the one about the West African photography industry before the emergence of film industries like Nollywood. One of the notes for a photo stated how West Africans did not have as many resources as the photographers in the West. And despite their lack of resources, I still saw the creativity that expressed with the creativity they expressed with the little that they had. It was so beautiful and reminded me that my culture is beautiful.